Everyone at camp thought Megan was just a quiet clerk, the girl who counted rifles and signed papers. But when a sniper laughed and bet she couldn't hit a steel target 2 miles away, Megan picked up his rifle and changed everything. The storage room at Camp Redwood was quiet. Dust floated in thin beams of light that leaked through narrow windows. Boxes were stacked in uneven towers. Old rifles lined the racks, their barrels oiled but rarely touched. Megan Hayes liked the silence. She was the one who signed the logs, who checked every piece of equipment before it left the room. Other soldiers called it the boring job. To Megan, it felt steady. She was not loud. She did not chase attention. Her voice was soft, and her eyes were calm. When others rushed, she stayed measured. She knew every corner of that room, every number on every weapon, every small sound that told her if something was wrong. Most passed her without looking. She was the supply girl, the one in the background. They thought she was nothing more than a clerk. But Megan carried a secret the others had never asked about. Back home, far from the base, her father had lived in the high plains of Wyoming. Life there was not forgiving. The winters cut deep and the summers burned. Out there, survival had no shortcuts. He taught her to handle rifles before she was tall enough to rest the stock properly on her shoulder. "You don't shoot to show off," he used to say. "You shoot because you must. You shoot because something depends on it." Megan grew up with that rhythm. She learned to watch the wind in the grass. She learned patience when hunting deer across frozen fields. By 16, she had steadier hands than most men twice her age. But the Army didn't see that. The Army saw her papers and placed her in logistics. She accepted it, but deep inside, a quiet ember waited. One late afternoon, a group of special forces soldiers came back from a long exercise. Their boots were muddy, their uniforms streaked with dust. They laughed loudly, tossing rifles onto the counter like they were nothing more than tools. Megan stood behind the desk, logging serial numbers. She moved with care, ignoring their noise. Among them was Sergeant Mason Drake. Tall, broad and confident, he carried himself like a man who owned every room he walked into. His rifle was different from the rest, sleek, heavy, customized for distance. Megan noticed the balance in his hands when he set it down. The men started talking about their training. Someone mentioned long shots, distances beyond what most soldiers ever tried. Drake leaned on the counter and said, "The real limit, around 3,600 meters. Past that, you're wasting rounds." They laughed. Megan didn't mean to speak. The words slipped out, soft as a thought. "That's not impossible." The room went still. "What was that?" Drake asked, narrowing his eyes. Megan looked up. Her face stayed calm. "I said it's not impossible, just unlikely." The laughter returned, louder this time. Soldiers slapped each other's shoulders, grinning at the boldness of the quiet clerk. Drake smirked. "You ever shot that far, Hayes?" "No." Her voice was steady. "But long shots don't scare me." The room howled with amusement. Drake leaned closer, his grin sharp. "Tell you what, I'll bet you can't even touch steel at 3,600. You up for that?" Every eye turned to her. Megan set down her pen, lifted her gaze, and held it steady on him. The silence stretched. Then she said, "If the rifle is good enough, I'll try." The room erupted again. Jokes flew. Someone shouted, "She's going to regret this." Drake grinned wider. 7 days. You get one chance. If you hit, I'll buy the whole unit dinner. If you miss, you clean every rifle we own for a month. Megan nodded once. "Then I'll need your rifle." For the first time, his grin faltered. Then he laughed. "Deal." And just like that, the quiet clerk was no longer invisible. Word spread fast. By the next day, the entire camp was buzzing. She's actually going to try it. Haze from Supply. No way. It's a joke. She'll choke. Megan heard the whispers in the hallways, in the dining hall, even in the range. Some laughed. Others shook their heads. A few looked thoughtful, almost curious. She ignored them, but at night, lying in her bunk, she felt the weight pressing on her chest. She remembered the distance, 3,600 meters, nearly 2.5 miles. She had never even attempted half of it. The physics alone were crushing. The bullet drop, the wind, the Earth's pull. Still, she had said yes, and Megan Hayes never broke her word. Chapter 4. Preparation. She began to practice quietly. Not at the special pit. She didn't have clearance, but at the base range, where ordinary soldiers qualified. She borrowed rifles, fired at standard distances, and focused on rhythm. Inhale, exhale, pause, squeeze. Her groups tightened. She adjusted for wind with instinct more than calculation. She remembered her father's lessons, his voice in the back of her mind. A shot is a conversation with the world, Megan. You don't command it, you listen. At night she read old notes, diagrams she had drawn years ago, wind charts copied from magazines, memories scribbled in pencil. She traced them with her finger, steadying herself with every line. Meanwhile, Drake entertained crowds with jokes. In the dining hall, he laughed. She doesn't stand a chance. It'll be good fun though. But not everyone agreed. A few soldiers whispered, "You ever see her shoot? She doesn't miss." The camp began to split, half waiting for her failure, half secretly hoping for her success. The morning of the 7th day arrived crisp and clear. The sky was a pale blue, stretched wide above the training grounds. Crowds gathered at the long-range pit. Trucks parked along the edge. Soldiers leaned on Humvees, sipping coffee, buzzing with excitement. Drake stood at the front, his rifle gleaming. On the table, the weapon was massive, built for distance. Its scope looked like an eye meant to reach the horizon. When Megan arrived, silence rippled through the crowd. She carried no gear, only a water bottle. She walked calmly, her boots steady. On the gravel, Drake smirked. "Glad you showed. Thought you'd back out." "I said I'd try," Megan answered simply. The crowd laughed, hungry for the show. She knelt, settled behind the rifle, and pressed her cheek against the stock. The steel target shimmered far away, nearly invisible in the heat. The world hushed. She breathed, listened, waited, then squeezed. The rifle thundered. The bullet vanished into distance. Silence followed. No sound, no ping. Laughter erupted. She didn't even hit dirt. Someone shouted. Drake chuckled. "That's about 100 yards short. Happens to the best. Well, most of us." Megan adjusted silently. She chambered. Another round. Fired again. This time, dust rose closer to the target. Murmurs spread. She fired again. Closer still. The laughter faded. The crowd leaned forward. On her 6th shot, the bullet struck the dirt just beside the plate. Gasps replaced laughter. And then, on the 7th shot, the steel rang. Clang. The sound carried across the pit like a bell. For a moment, no one moved. Then the crowd erupted. She hit it. No way. She actually hit it. Megan stayed. Steady. Chambered again. Fired. Clang. Another hit. The crowd roared. Awe now replaced disbelief. Soldiers stared wide-eyed, some shaking their heads. Her 9th shot missed by inches. Groans spread, but her 10th shot rang again. Clang. 3 hits at 3,600 meters. The pit exploded in cheers. Soldiers shouted, clapped. Some even tossed their caps. The air felt electric. Drake lowered his scope slowly. His grin was gone. In its place was something harder to hide: respect. Megan cleared the rifle, set it down, and rose quietly. No smile, no gloating, just calm. She had done what she said she would. The legend spread faster than truth. By evening, the story was told in every corner of camp. Some claimed she hit 5 shots. Others swore she had done it without missing. The details grew wild, but the core remained. The supply clerk had hit steel at 2.5 miles. The next morning, soldiers greeted Megan with nods, with respect in their eyes. Some asked her about scopes, wind, ballistics. She answered simply, without pride. Drake avoided the talk, but when their paths crossed, he gave her a curt nod. No smirk, just acknowledgement. One evening, he approached her outside the armory. His voice was low. "You made your point." She looked at him calmly. "I wasn't trying to." "Then why?" "Because you said I couldn't. And you weren't just talking about the shot. You were talking about me." Drake stayed quiet. Her words landed heavy. Finally, he extended a hand. Bet settled. She shook it. Firm. Steady. From then on, she was no longer invisible. Chapter 7. The quiet truth weeks passed, but the stories didn't fade. It grew, retold with awe to new soldiers, whispered during guard shifts, shared like a campfire tale. Megan's days remained the same. She logged weapons, cleaned rifles, kept her head down. She never repeated the shot, never sought the sniper line. But she noticed the change. Soldiers who once ignored her now looked at her differently. They saw not just a clerk, but something more. Sometimes younger soldiers came to her quietly, nervous about qualifying, doubting themselves. She told them the same words her father once told her. Don't let someone else decide what you can't do. And that was the real shot she had taken, the one that mattered most.